Today we're going to take a look at section 2.3, which is all about graphing equations of a line. We have a couple of ways we can graph equations of a line, and that's what we'll be going through today. The first thing you have in your note guide is your vocabulary words as usual. First word is the parent function, and for right now, just write down it's the most basic function in a family of functions, just like it says here. I'll talk more about that on the next screen. The y-intercept is the point where the graph intersects the y-axis. That's the important key there, is to know that it's a point. Slope-intercept form, you've seen that before. We've talked about it briefly. Y equals mx plus b. Remember that the slope is m and the y-intercept is b. And then we're also going to spend today talking about the standard form of a linear equation. And standard form of an equation looks like this. Ax plus by equals c. So you'll notice that the x and the y are on the same side of the equation, and that's one of the forms we're going to be graphing from today. And then finally, the x-intercept is the point where the graph intersects the x-axis. So we have x-intercepts and we have y-intercepts. So parent function, well, what is that? Remember on the previous screen we said the parent function is the basic of any family of functions. So if we're talking about the parent function of a linear function, the parent function is simply y equals x. That's as basic as you can get to have the graph of a line. And they show you the picture of that graph in this box. And they want you to notice a few things about it. First of all, the y-intercept is 0. That's why you see no number at the end of the parent function. Second of all, the slope is 1. Up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. Or if you want to go backwards, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. And that's why that is the most basic of all the linear functions, so we call it the parent function. In order to make a graph today, one of the ways we're going to do that is we are going to use slope-intercept form. There are 4 steps to graphing in slope-intercept form. Step number 1, write the equation in slope-intercept form. Now, if you happen to not remember what that is, maybe you need to add below this step, write it into y equals mx plus b. That's slope-intercept form. Then identify the y-intercept b and use it to plot a point. So that's the first point you plot. Whatever the b value is, that's your y-intercept. Then second of all, look at the slope, which we always call the m, and use it to plot a second point by counting rise over run. Rise over run. And then draw a line through those 2 points that you made. Okay, so we're going to graph y equals negative 3 halves x plus 1. Well, step 1, the equation is already in slope-intercept form because it's solved for y. So step 2, we're going to identify the y-intercept, which is the number on the back end all by itself, which is a 1. So if that's the y-intercept, it crosses through the axis at the point 0, 1. And remember, it's the y-axis that it crosses. So let's go ahead and put that point over here. Up here at 0, 1 is our y-intercept. Secondly, we need to find our slope, and I know it says negative 3 halves. Remember that that negative sign can go on the top or the bottom, but not both. I like to always put it on the top. That way, when I do rise over run, I'm always running from left to right. I'm always going straight ahead. I can take care of the negative part by doing the drop. So in this case, I'm going to drop 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I always run to the right, 1, 2. And there's another point. Now, if you really want to get accurate, count it out more than once. So we can go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And if you want to get more up in the other quadrant, you can count in reverse. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 is where we'd have to go to get a point in that line. Filling in all the blanks below here, it says, so plot a second point on the line by starting at, well, we start at our y-intercept. So that would be 0, 1. And then moving down 3 units, and to the right 2 units, and we ended up at the point 2, negative 2. So we go ahead and we draw a line through those 2 points. Remember to get out your straight edge, please. Draw a straight line through those 2 points. Make sure you put arrows at the end of it. Use your whole graph. And there is the graph for that equation. So that was slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. The second way we're going to graph is using standard form. And the first step to using standard form is writing the equation in standard form. Again, I think it might be a good idea to write in your notes right here what standard form looks like, which is ax plus by equals 6. Then standard form is totally different than how we did y-intercept form. Because in standard form, your x and your y are on the same side, so we don't know the slope. But what we can do is easily identify the x-intercept if we just let y be 0 and solve for x. Use that intercept then to plot a point where the line crosses the x-axis. Then we repeat that step, but this time we're going to find the y-intercept by letting x be 0 and solving for y. And then we use that to find the point where the line crosses the y-axis. Now we have 2 points. We can draw a line through those 2 points, and we have our graph. It actually is a lot easier than it sounds, so let's take a look at one. We are supposed to graph 2x plus 3y equals 12. Well, step number 1, it says to graph it in standard form, and this already is in standard form because my x and my y are on the same side, and the number is on the other side. So the next thing you do is you let your y be 0. So I'm going to substitute a 0 in there for y, and notice what happens. This whole thing just falls out of the equation. So what you end up solving is 2x equals 12. Well, if 2x equals 12, then x equals 6. So if x equals 6, we go to the x-axis, and we go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's the x-intercept. So if x equals 6, you put it on the x-axis. All right, so 6, 0 was the point we just plotted. Now repeat that same thing, but this time let's let the x be 0. So this whole term falls out. And now we solve for y. Well, if 3y equals 12, y equals 4. So I let x be 0, and it's a y, so I go to the y-axis, and I go up 1, 2, 3, 4. So I plot the point 0, 4. Since it said y equals 4, I put it on the y-axis, because that's about the only thing that can go wrong on these, is you get the axis backwards. So whatever letter you solve for, that's the axis it goes on. Then, of course, we need to grab our straight edge, draw a line through those 2 points, put an arrow at the end of our line, and that is the graph, and that's standard form. Now, the thing about standard form is it's probably the least practiced one, but it really, really is pretty easy to do as long as you have a couple of things. Look back at your original problem. Our original problem was 2x plus 3y equals 12. If both the a, which is 2, and the b, which is 3, can easily be divided into the c, it's probably the easiest one to graph. So look at your problem, and if you have that situation, rather than solving for y and doing the slope-intercept form, I think you're going to find that standard form is quicker for you. You just got to practice a little bit so you're comfortable with it. Okay, then we have these horizontal and vertical lines, which you guys like to call straight. Now remember, we talked about these yesterday, that when you graph a horizontal line, the graph is y equals c. So what point is it going to go to? Well, look at this. It says y equals c, so that means the y in your point has to be a c, so it must be 0c. What I like to do is I like to say, okay, go up on the y-axis, however many c says, and put a point. Vertical line is the reverse of that. This time x equals c, so c would go right here, and the y is 0. So we are going to graph y equals -1 and x equals 2. Okay, I'm just going to concentrate on the graph for a second and not fill in the stuff on the left, because here's the way I want you to think about it, or I think one way that'll work for you, so you don't mix up the horizontal and vertical line. Y equals -1. All right, so I'm going to go on the y-axis, somewhere along here, and it says -1, so that's where I put it at. Well, now I got to draw a line. Well, I'm not going to draw a vertical line because otherwise that would give me the y-axis every time, and that's not the line I want. So my only other choice is to draw a horizontal line, and sure enough, that's all of the dots where y is -1. So go down 1, draw a dot, and it's a horizontal line because it should cut through the y-axis if y equals -1. So use the same thinking for x equals 2. I'm going to go on the x-axis, 1, 2, put a dot, and now I need to cut through the x-axis. So this one's going to have to be a vertical line going through that point. So think about it, cuts through the axis of the letter you see. I'll go back and fill in what it says to the left here because I know some of you like to have complete notes. So this would be a horizontal line, goes through the point 0, -1, and notice that every point on the line has a y-coordinate of -1. And the second one, the graph of x equals 2, is a vertical line that passes through the point 2, 0, and notice that every point on the line has an x-coordinate of 2. Alrighty, time to practice. There's 6 of them to practice, so please put me on pause. Try doing each of those 6 on your own or one at a time and then listen to the video, however you want to do it. But anyways, please practice these before looking at how I'm doing it. Okay, number 1, your first decision is to decide what form is it in or what form can you easily get it into. Well, this is already in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to start by plotting my y-intercept, which is 2. Notice this graph counts by 2. Oh boy, my board is really off on this side, I guess. It counts by 2, so make sure you put your point on 2. Then the slope is -2. Well, that's the same thing as -2 over 1. So we're going to go down 2 over just 1, and then down 2 over 1. Oh my goodness, my board is so off, I can't do this. I'm going to end up there. Down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. So I'm going to end up there. So there's your line. Get out your straight edge. It's going to look something like that. I apologize how off my board is, but you can get the idea. Okay, this next one is also in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. So my b is -4. So I go down, again, I'm counting by 2s. 2, 4. Okay, there's -4. My slope is +4/3. So that means I'm going to have to go up 4 and over 3. Okay, that's a little odd, but here you go. Up 4, 1, 2, 4, and over 1, 2, 3. Okay, and your line's going to go this way. And look at it. Is it going in a positive direction? If it is, then you probably counted right. If it's not, you made a mistake somewhere in counting your slope. The next one's in standard form, and I noticed that 4 and 2 can go into 8. So I'm going to leave it in standard form. That's going to be the easiest way to go. I'll do my work down below here. First of all, I'm going to let y be 0, so that means 4x has to equal 8. Well, if 4x equals 8, then x equals 2. You could even do that in your head by just covering up the 2y part. There's my dot, x equals 2. Remember, if x equals 2, the line goes through the x-axis, and there's the graph. Oh, what am I doing? This isn't a vertical line. So sorry. Okay, all we got is one of them. X equals 2. Back up. X equals 2. Okay, we got to get the y-intercept. Let's see. To get the y-intercept, we let x be 0. So 4 times 0 is 0. We get the equation 2y equals 8. So y equals 4. So since it's y equals 4, that's the y-intercept. So I put my dot on 4, and that's the graph I should be making. So grab your straight edge, go through both of those lines. Oh my goodness, Lord. And put your arrows on each end, and there's a poor example of a line going through the dots. Okay, number 4, what form is it in? Yes, standard form. And -5 and 3 both go into 15. So I can easily solve this thing. You can't see me right now, but I'm going to cover up the 3y and then let -5x equal 15. So x equals -3. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover up the x and solve for y, and when I do, y equals 3. So I have my two intercepts without a whole lot of work. X is negative 3, so remember that's on the x-axis. Y is positive 3, so remember that's on the y-axis. So get out your straight edge and draw a line through your graph, and there you go. 2 left. Okay, this first one, y equals 4. Now, is that horizontal or vertical? I don't know. We get confused. But here's all you got to do. It's like y equals 4. Okay, well, I'm going to go on the y-axis, and I'm going to put a dot at 4. So there's my dot. Now, my line needs to go through that dot. I don't want to do a vertical line because that would just go through the axis. That doesn't make sense. So it's a horizontal line when y equals 4. X equals negative 2. Okay, so on the x-axis, I'm going to go over negative 2. And I need a line that cuts through the x-axis. So it's going to be a vertical line, and there's your graph. All right, there's the 6 examples of what you need to do. On your worksheet, it's going to have you graph both using slope-intercept form and standard form. Now, I will say this. If you see one that they say graph using slope-intercept form, and you'd rather use standard form because it just looks easier, do that. It's okay. You can use whichever form you want, regardless of what the directions say on the worksheet, but you have to use one form or the other. So either you solve for y, and you have it in slope-intercept form, or you have x and y on the same side, and you use standard form. One or the other, it doesn't matter to me, regardless of what the directions above the graph say. Just make sure you graph all of them, please. And then remember, practice quiz on page 96, and the real quiz tomorrow. All right, be good. We'll see you tomorrow.